It's been 12 years, but you still remember it like it was yesterday. You and two of your countrymen were in Cambodia working for a charity that cleared landmines, but that didn't matter to the Khmer Rouge. The brutal regime kidnapped you, planning to execute you. You barely escaped with your life. So what are you doing back here? After a close call, few people would return to one of the sites they came closest to death. But you aren't most people. You're Chris Moon, and you've stared death in the eye more than once. And you're back in Cambodia for one reason only: to come face to face with your captor and give them exactly what they deserve. The year was 1993, and Chris Moon was a British Army captain looking for his next great mission. He had served his country with honor, but he wasn't done yet, and his desire to make the world a safer place led him to one of the most dangerous charities in the world, the Halo Trust. This high-risk group of volunteers travels all over the world to current and former combat zones to remove one of the most pressing threats to civilians: landmines. With over 6,000 volunteers worldwide, they're one of the world's largest anti-mine organizations, and their members have little problem putting themselves in danger for the greater good. Active in Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, South America, and the Balkans, they often face opposition from the local government, but few countries posed a bigger challenge than Cambodia. Like many countries in Southeast Asia, Cambodia had a growing communist movement during the Cold War, but their leadership had darker plans, and the Cambodian Civil War brought the Khmer Rouge to power. A parliamentary organization led by the nationalist Pol Pot, by 1975, he controlled all of Cambodia and he enforced his rule with maximum force. Part of that was the extensive use of landmines, which scattered the countryside. Not only did both sides of the Civil War use them in combat, but many people used them to protect sites like temples from looting and invaders. The problem with landmines is they're supposed to be hidden, and when you hide that many, you're bound to lose track of them. The result? Cambodia has more amputees per capita than anywhere in the world. That made Cambodia a top priority for the Halo Trust, and Chris Moon was ready to answer the call. But the Khmer Rouge, which ruled Cambodia until 1999, were deeply distrustful of outsiders, and the parliamentary forces were notorious for hostage-taking and executions. Moon and his team were cleaning mines in the area when they were quickly surrounded by gun-toting Khmer Rouge soldiers. They wasted no time identifying themselves as civilians with a charity, but it didn't matter. They were taken into custody, and when the locals who'd been helping them asked about them, they were told they were taken in for interrogation and then executed. Moon knew he had to think fast. As a former army captain, he had been in tight situations before. The Khmer Rouge had many young, radicalized soldiers who wouldn't be open to talking to a local, and the gleeful giggling among their captors chilled Moon to the bone. Images of being forced to play Russian roulette like in the movie The Deer Hunter flashed through Moon's head. But something was different about the ringleader of their kidnappers. He seemed calm, intelligent, and cautious. He even had planted a rose garden in the middle of the jungle amid all the carnage. Moon knew if he and his fellow hostages were going to get out of here, he was going to have to focus on the man he called Mr. Clever. There were hard days of interrogation ahead, as Moon was separated from his partners and met with demands about why they were actually there. It took hard work, but he maintained their narrative of being civilian workers trying to clear landmines and appealed to Mr. Clever's intelligence. The execution of 3 innocent aid workers would bring a lot of unwanted attention to Khmer Rouge, and as a divisional commander, Mr. Clever did not want to get blamed for any problems with the regime. Pol Pot was notorious for killing his own people, and getting his attention was not something the ambitious young soldier wanted to do. After 3 days that felt like forever, Chris Moon and his men were led by their captors 30 miles through a mine-filled jungle to freedom. Chris Moon was free, but he was haunted by the experience. The Khmer Rouge had taken him to the brink of death, repaying his work to help their country with threats of murder. That chapter of his life wasn't closed yet, but there was no time to dwell on it. Despite his family worrying, he went right back to work for Halo Trust. He continued going on missions for them, clearing mines around the world. And 2 years after his close call in Cambodia, he was sent to another dangerous hotspot, Mozambique, where years of civil war and local conflicts had left the country riddled with almost 200,000 stray landmines. Clearing mines is taking your life into your own hands every time, but Chris Moon wasn't scared of this new mine-filled land. He ran every night along the perimeter of the base, taking in the new landscape. But his luck ran out one day while clearing long strips of mine along the former combat zone. In a safety lane supposedly already cleared, he came across an unknown mine. Mine drills are supposed to detect the metal in mines, but this was a newer mine constructed with less metal. Chris cleared it as safe, returned to the cleared lane, and triggered it, nearly killing him and causing massive injuries. With his right leg blown clean off and his right hand shredded, he crawled toward the remnants of the mine to inspect it before the medical team got there and flew him to safety. Chris Moon was no longer in a war zone, but his battle was just beginning. His leg was left behind in the rubble, and the doctors at the Johannesburg hospital treating him quickly determined that his hands couldn't be saved. Another battle was beginning for Moon, adjusting to the loss of 2 of his limbs. But he wasted no time tackling rehabilitation with the same determination that he approached everything else. Soon he was strapping on an artificial leg and hook, swimming in a rehab pool, and learning to walk so he could get back to his next goal, running. Moon had a powerful desire to do good, and he was determined to parlay his new circumstances into opportunities. His work in anti-landmine activism even gained the attention of one of the world's most famous activists for the cause, Diana, Princess of Wales, who honored him at an event not long before her death. When the 1998 Winter Olympics came around, he brought the ceremonial torch into the stadium to start the procession. Moon would have gone back to work clearing landmines as soon as he was equipped with prosthetics, but there was one problem. The metal in his new hand and leg would interfere with the metal detectors used to dig up the mines. So he'd have to help the Halo Trust another way, and he settled on raising money for the charity. He trained relentlessly, learning to run on his prosthetic like it was second nature. Within a year of being blown up by a landmine, Chris Moon was running in the London Marathon. But he wasn't done. He kept training, and he blew past the recovery times for people with similar injuries. In 1997, he ran the challenging Marathon des Sables and has since moved on to ultra marathons, including the Badwater Death Valley Ultra, running 135 miles in over 120-degree Fahrenheit heat. As an activist against landmines and for greater inclusion of people with disabilities, Chris Moon became one of England's most prolific fundraisers. Not only did he raise millions for charity, but he became a popular motivational speaker. His life story was even profiled in a documentary, I Shouldn't Be Alive: Kidnapped in the Killing Fields. Despite all he'd achieved and the trauma he'd survived, Moon found his mind kept drifting back to those 3 terrifying days he spent as a captive of the Khmer Rouge, and particularly to the tense interrogations and negotiations he'd shared with Mr. Clever. It was 2005 when he realized what he had to do. He needed to go back and find Mr. Clever. They had unfinished business. It wasn't the first time Moon had been back in Cambodia. He'd walked the length of Cambodia as part of a charity march a few years earlier, after the fall of the Khmer Rouge. But this time, he was here on a mission. It wasn't easy to track down Mr. Clever, but he managed and was ready to confront the complex memories he had of the man. Mr. Clever was the man who interrupted their mission of mercy and plunged them into 3 days of terror. He was also the smart man who eventually understood they were innocents and took them to safety. But Chris Moon wasn't prepared for what had happened when he finally looked into his captor's eyes again for the first time in 12 years. Moon had never forgotten Mr. Clever, and it turns out Mr. Clever had never forgotten him either. He greeted him politely, and the 2 men began to talk. Word had reached Mr. Clever of Moon's exploits in charity work, about his near-death experience in Mozambique, and of his triumphant return to Cambodia. Mr. Clever even took Moon around the sites of Cambodia where he had been captured. Many of the buildings had been burned down and the forest had overgrown some of them. Moon reflected that the place had been a site of terror for him all those years ago and was now one of peace. The mines had mostly been removed. The young men who were radical soldiers under the Khmer Rouge were now finding their own purpose away from war, and the 2 former enemies were able to find common ground. Moon won't share Mr. Clever's name, but he revealed that the former Khmer Rouge soldier had a 21-year-old daughter studying abroad in New Zealand. The age of Pol Pot was over, and with it came new opportunities and new freedom for the people of Cambodia. Moon, too, has made the most of his new start, earning a master's degree and founding his own company, Making the Best. Able to finally put the terror of his time in Khmer Rouge captivity behind him, he'll be the first to tell you he regrets nothing about his life and credits all the challenges he's overcome for making him the man he is today. He even hopes to meet Mr. Clever again one day and see where their journeys have taken them since those 3 days in Cambodia. But first, there's more marathons and a lot more money for charity ahead for Chris Moon. For more on unlikely survival in a terrifying hostage situation, check out Crazy Rescue Mission of Hijacked Airplane, Operation Entebbe, or check out this video instead. Thanks for watching and see you next time.